everyone. Dave Dubeau here with another episode of the Property Profits Real Estate Podcast. Today, zooming in with me, we've got James Svetec and Riley Oickle. I hope I'm pronouncing your name properly, Riley. Is that all right? Did I massacre it? Was that all right?
No, that's right. You did.
All right, perfect.
Yeah.
So James I've known for quite some time, and Riley I met not that long ago. And these guys are doing some very, very cool things with Airbnb right now in this whole COVID weirdness. So a lot of people kind of predicted the demise of Airbnb with the pandemic hitting, but these guys have found a way to make it work, and in certain ways work better than ever in spite of or because of the whole pandemic. So this is going to be a really interesting call. Gentlemen, what have I left out that I should have included in that little intro?
No, I think that's pretty much it. Like we figured out, we've been watching the data, watching the numbers, seeing how things have been doing with Airbnb for the past. I mean, for me, I've been in this space for about 5 years now, so I kind of always have my finger on the pulse. And one of the things that we started to notice was that a lot of properties outside of major cities were getting a huge amount of domestic tourism. People wanting to get out of the city, have more space, do a little bit of a staycation that they could drive to.
Yeah.
And the numbers on some of these properties are just absolutely insane when you start really diving into them. So we just recently invested in a property just a couple hours outside of Toronto that our most conservative projections were looking at about a 278% combined ROI. And I think a big piece of that is finding the right deal and knowing the numbers, but a huge portion of it is just that the numbers make a ton of sense on the income side of things because they are getting a lot of traffic now. But even pre-COVID, it also did exceptionally well in those areas. So yeah, it's been pretty.
All right, well that's a good point. So to get started with, why don't you kind of tell us how the landscape has changed over the course of the pandemic when it comes to Airbnb in general?
Yeah. So I'd say with Airbnb in general, the major shift is that if you're in a downtown core location that relied a lot on international travelers coming in to get your place booked up, then you're finding that you're having to pivot your strategy. And so it can still do well, but you're going to have to house, let's say, traveling healthcare workers or maybe extended stay, 1 month, 2 month type stays. So not the 3-night stays or the 1 week stays that you're used to. So there's some adaptation going on, and it's kind of like just optimizing your property in the down season. You just have to make sure that you're really active with it. But then in other areas that traditionally got a lot of domestic tourism, so think about cottage country is it one great example. Those areas are doing absolutely phenomenal right now because there's not a lot of international, if any international travel happening at all. But that's going both ways. So the people that are in Toronto that would typically go on vacation down to Florida or over to Europe or wherever else, they're stuck kind of in this little bubble of Ontario. Maybe they can go out of province, but we're seeing a huge spike in domestic tourism. So any area that's sort of within 2 to 3 hours drive of a populous downtown urban center, you're seeing huge spikes in the numbers there. Inventory is getting completely booked up, so you can charge some pretty hefty rates compared to what you normally would, and you're going to see really, really high occupancy rates even through the winter.
That is really interesting. It brings to mind my daughter. She just moved to Vancouver with a couple of friends, and they are renting a beautiful apartment right downtown. I can't remember what floor they're on, 23rd floor or something like that. This thing, it used to be, so it's fully furnished, used to be a full-time Airbnb type thing. And the guy supposedly was making $12,000 to $14,000 a month with it. They're renting it all in for $3,000 a month between the three of them. So it's a pretty good deal for them. And this guy's just kind of treading water until things turn around for him again. So yeah, I can definitely see how downtown Airbnbs have taken a big hit. Riley, talk to us a little bit about your journey, your experience with Airbnb over the pandemic.
Of course, yeah. So before the pandemic, I really didn't have much of an experience, to be honest. My experience was in the multifamily space, so multifamily residential properties, and really loved getting my hands on like 3 or 4 unit buildings, Southwestern Ontario is kind of the main area that I have a lot of these properties in. And so usually we use the burst strategy, which really came into play here with the Airbnb project that now James and I are partnered up on, and we're looking to do quite a few more of these projects. So it's really just finding like a really distressed property that needs a lot of TLC, and making sure that we're able to do strategic renovations to the property to then increase the values, of course. But rather than renting it long term, Airbnb is obviously a huge income source. So there was really an arbitrage there just with this last Airbnb that we'd bought. The arbitrage was that the property was actually a lake view and not like right on the water. And so because of that, the cool piece was a lot of kind of long-term renters weren't interested in that property, or even just families that were looking to buy a property. If you're looking to buy a cottage, you usually want it to be directly on the water. Right. Whereas if someone's renting an Airbnb for 2 or 3 evenings, it's really not that advantageous. Like it isn't a make or break decision typically for an Airbnb renter. So it's really interesting.
What are they looking for if they're going out to cottage country? Wouldn't the Airbnb person be looking to be right on the lake as well? Obviously not, but why not? Why is it not that big of a deal for them?
Yeah, so I think what it really comes down to for a lot of people that are on Airbnb is looking for certain amenities, certain features. And especially right now, like James was saying, with COVID and everything, and people that are in these urban centers wanting to get out of the city, but sometimes they're actually looking to get out of the city to still work and still maintain like kind of the same standard of living that they were in beforehand. So we're actually making sure that our Airbnbs have like really, really good internet, which is a main feature right now, and something that that's super important when we're looking at people coming from Toronto or wherever it might be, and still wanting to work from afar, like remotely. So there's certainly certain amenities, and we had also found that there was a big demand for Airbnbs that had like hot tubs and saunas. So that's something that we're putting into the backyard of this Airbnb. So just kind of checking off the boxes is the major thing there. And like obviously my background before COVID, not really being in Airbnb, in the Airbnb space, didn't allow for me to kind of implement these cool like amenities, like, you know, the hot tub or the sauna into a backyard, like the Airbnb space is allowing me to. So it's been a lot of fun. Yeah,
so if I'm reading between the lines here, you guys, it sounds like you found kind of a bit of a distressed rural type property, a cottage type property. You got it for a reasonably decent price, and you've upgraded it. Have you turned it in from 1 unit to 2 units, that kind of thing? Or have you done like the full burr on this property, or how's it looking?
Yeah, so we're doing a pretty extensive renovation of the property, but keeping it just one single family unit. Okay. The thing with Airbnbs and short-term rentals is you have to renovate them differently than you typically would a long-term rental. So Riley pointed to a couple of the amenities that we do differently in an Airbnb, and some of the things that people are looking for a little bit different when they're looking for an Airbnb, where they, aren't going to be driving that speedboat. So they don't need to be right on the water and have a dock. They just need to have access to the water to drop a canoe in, something like that.
Right. That makes sense.
So the renovation is kind of similar. Like if you have your Airbnb split into 2 units as an Airbnb, that can be kind of challenging, because then you end up having, it's just hard to control the guest experience when there might be someone above that's making more noise. They're going to be sharing a space, which especially right now isn't really desirable for a lot of people. And one of the really great things about this property as well, that Riley was mentioning, there's sort of an arbitrage, is that one element was that it's not as desirable for the people looking to buy a cottage because it's not directly on the water. But the other element was that the basement was partially finished, and we have 3 additional bedrooms in the basement. So in total, it's actually a 6-bedroom property. And so the reason that we decided to keep it as 1 unit, as a 6-bedroom property, and to finish off the rest of the basement so that we could fully utilize that space down there, is that with Airbnb, one of the interesting things is that as you increase the number of people that can stay, you do a couple things that really help you on the income side of it. Number one, you're opening yourself up to a whole different segment of the market, where now you can accommodate the guest that's just a couple, but you can also accommodate groups of 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or all the way up to 10. So you've got access to a way bigger pool of buyers. And then obviously, as you can sleep more people, if it's going to be a larger group, they're looking at the price in a different way. They're looking at what's the price per person when me and my friends come up to this cottage. And so at let's say $100 per person per night, it seems really, really reasonable. But when you have 8 people, that means we're getting $800 a night for the property. So it makes a lot of sense.
So walk us through what this property would rent out for typically as a typical long-term rental versus what you anticipate you're going to be seeing doing Airbnb.
Yeah, so Riley could probably speak more to the long-term rental. I would say it probably in that market would get about $2,000 a month, maybe on long-term, maybe $2,200. Do you agree with that there, Riley?
Yeah, it was projected to be like $2,100 per month. So long-term, we're looking at like maybe around $25,000 for the entire year. Mm-hmm. If we were renting it to a family of maybe 4 or 5. Yeah.
All right. And what are you looking at by having it as a short-term rental?
So short-term rental, you're going to fluctuate a little bit month to month, obviously. Summertime, it's going to be a lot higher than in the winter time. But we're looking at the most conservative worst case scenario if things go like really poorly this year for the property. And this is based on 2019 and 18 data, not based on 2020 data that was inflated. Yeah. A real worst case scenario for the property is about $50,000 for the year. More reasonable, what would be kind of in line with, hey, we're doing well with the property, is about $70,000 a year. And our best case projection puts us at about $90,000 to $100,000 a year.
All right. Yeah. So even at worst case scenario, you're doubling revenues compared to what you would be getting just holding on to this as a long term. Now, what are the additional headaches that are involved with running a property like this that's more rural? I mean, one of the big advantages, as I understand, with the suburban or the urban Airbnbs is you can outsource all of the maintenance, all of the cleanup, the janitorial side of things. How's that going to work out in the sticks?
Yeah, so the nice thing is we were actually able to buy the property in a location that is serviceable. Like we can still have our cleaning team go out there, and we've got a cleaning team lined up that's going to be able to clean it on all the turnovers. And Riley's done a fantastic.
Is the team local? It must be fairly local.
Yeah.
That's 3 hours outside of Toronto. You're not.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And especially because like in cottage country, there is a real demand for it, right? Because there are a lot of properties on Airbnb, and then a lot of cottagers want to have a professional cleaning team and open their place up for the spring. So there's actually a number of different options in the area that we purchased in, which is really nice. And then Riley's actually done a really good job putting together sort of our power team for all the renovation, and then also just for the ongoing yard maintenance and things like that.
Very, very cool. Well, this is interesting, you guys. So one of the other questions I was going to ask is, okay, well, it sounds great right now. We're in the midst of this pandemic, but everybody's getting a shot in the arm, and, wave the magic wand. 6 months, 12 months from now, it'll all be a distant memory. I hope. We all hope. But it sounds like you're making your projections based on pre-COVID type numbers. So you're not being pie in the sky thinking that this demand is going to be there forever.
Exactly. Yeah. I always tell people, like, when you're investing in short-term rental, a lot of people, the concern is that there's a lot of volatility in the market. And the truth is it's not unpredictable. It's highly predictable. And you can look at data to figure out exactly how well a property is going to perform. You just need to know what you're doing when you're running those numbers. And then you always want to have backups and contingencies in place so that if something unexpected happens, like COVID happened right now, and it negatively impacts you, obviously for the property that we bought and the location we did, it's a positive impact. But like you pointed to, there's people out there in Vancouver who were used to earning $12,000 a month. They're now earning $3,000 a month. Yeah. You want to have that backup plan in place. So whether that's just making sure that your numbers make sense so that you can adapt and lower them enough so that you're still going to be able to cash flow on the property, even in a worst case scenario, or whether that's having a backup plan, like being able to transition over to long-term rentals. It's important to, number one, just run the numbers conservatively and know what your worst case scenario is, but then also just have different backups in place so that you're never left with a property that's not going to be cash flowing positive.
Yeah, that's very, very good. Awesome, you guys. Time flies when we're having fun. Riley, if people want to find out more about what you're up to and how to get in touch with you guys, either Riley or James, what should they do?
Yeah, so for my stuff here, if anyone wants to follow the journey, you can follow me on Instagram at Oikle Investor. So that would be the handle. And James?
Yeah, so for me, it's just James Svetec on Instagram. That's a great place to follow along, and feel free to reach out with a message. And if you want to learn more about working with us to start actually getting invested in short-term rentals, you can just go to bnbmasteryprogram.com/book a call. And Riley and I are actually going to be working with a really small group of investors over the next 6 to 12 months here, just basically helping them to get started actually investing in short-term rental properties.
Very cool. Gentlemen, it's been a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Great to be on board.
All right, everybody, take care, and we'll see you on the next episode. Bye-bye. Well, hey there. Thanks for tuning into the Property Profits podcast. If you like this episode, that's great. Please go ahead and subscribe on iTunes. Give us a good review. That'd be awesome. I appreciate that. And if you're looking to attract investors and raise capital for your deals, then I'm going to invite you to get a complimentary copy of my newest book, right back there. There it is. The Money Partner Formula. You can get a PDF version at investorattractionbook.com. Again, investorattractionbook.com. Take care.